A long night had begun. Jesus was arrested and taken away, and what happened next was actually very confusing. Throughout the night, Jesus was taken from place to place. He was questioned, he was mocked, he was rejected, and finally he was sentenced to death. It was all very frightening. Most of Jesus' friends had actually run away. They were scared, all except Peter, who tried to stay close to Jesus, and he followed the crowd to outside the courtyard of the high priest Caiaphas, just to see what was happening. All the time he was there, he was trying not to think about the words Jesus had said only a few hours earlier. Peter, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times. Let's go together to the courtyard.
I'm going to tell you a story all about a man called Peter. Now, Peter was a great friend of Jesus, and when Jesus was arrested in the garden, Peter wanted to follow him to find out what would happen. The guards led Jesus by the arms out of the garden and through the streets. Peter followed close behind, watching as the light from the guards' torches shone on the walls of the streets. He stayed close, but not so close he could be seen. Eventually, the guards took Jesus through a courtyard and into a large house, the house that Peter knew belonged to Caiaphas, the high priest. Peter stopped in the courtyard. It was a cold night, so he went to a fire and crouched down. It was the first time Peter had been alone. It was a crazy evening, and he stopped to gather his thoughts. What a strange night it had been. He thought about all that had happened and what Jesus had said to him earlier on in the day. Peter, Jesus had said, before the cockerel crows, you will deny knowing me 3 times. It was dark in the courtyard, but from the light of the fire, people could see some servants on the far side, going about some chores, carrying water, one man shoveling hay. Next to him was a donkey in the stable, rustling around, and a dog yawning asleep on the floor. Just then a woman came to join Peter at the fire. She smiled and said hello, and he greeted her. But then her face changed. She looked at Peter and said, I know you. You're a friend of Jesus. Peter looked shocked. He didn't want to be caught, so he said to the woman, I don't know what you're talking about, woman. I've never met the man. Another man came over and came to join them by the fire. The woman said, hey, we know him. He said, we do know you. You're a follower of Jesus. We've seen you with him before. Peter got angry and said, I don't know Jesus. People heard the commotion, and they all came around the fire and stood looking at Peter. Yes, you are, said the first woman. I'm sure of it. You are a follower and a friend of Jesus. Peter stood up, and he said for the 3rd time, I told you, I don't know Jesus. When Peter said that, a cockerel crowed. Cock-a-doodle-doo. And just then, Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him. Peter, Jesus had said, before the cockerel crows, you will deny knowing me 3 times. Why do you think that Peter denied knowing Jesus? Perhaps you'd like to take some time to discuss it among yourselves. Have you ever done anything that you weren't happy about? Have you ever said something nasty to somebody or let somebody down? What I'd like you to do is take a piece of paper and a pen, think about a time that you've done something that you shouldn't have, and write on the piece of paper or even draw a picture that represents what you did. Before you leave here, I want you to take this paper and put it into the water and watch as the paper dissolves away. Even though Peter had denied knowing Jesus, he ended up being a leader of all of the churches around that area. You see, God forgave Peter, and God will also forgive you. God forgives us of everything we do wrong. All we have to do is ask him to forgive us. So as you put your paper in the water and it melts away, think about the thing that it represents, the thing that you did wrong, and ask God to forgive you, and he will.